Hello, everyone. Welcome to Feedstuffs 365. I'm Sarah Muirhead. With me today is Greg Soulje, back on a Tuesday here and to give us an update. It's kind of been a normal summer weekend here in the Midwest, but I know down in Texas they've been having some terrible, terrible things with the flooding. And I think North Carolina, South Carolina, that whole coast has got a tropical storm that kind of popped up there at the last minute. So lots to talk about.
Yeah, that was a story late last week with Chantel. Quick little depression to a tropical storm, inland to a depression, 5 to 10 inches of rain in really areas that needed some rainfall. Now out to sea, we're back into this very quiet, benign tropical setup, and that's kind of the way these things may get going in the fringes of the Atlantic and the Gulf, shallow waters, very warm waters. Not quite the heat that we had here a couple of years ago in some of those waters, and of course in Texas, literally there's areas of central Texas from Dallas-Fort Worth to north of Kerr County that are overtly wet. Then you run into that concrete type soil and the hills because of dryness and drought. And that's how it was one of these perfect storms, if you will. And this is not a very much unprecedented event because we had this back in the late 80s. We had it back in the 70s as well. A couple of these devastating taking floods out there through Texas. And tell you what, they've got a lot of cleanup and recovery. And they're not out of the woods yet either with rainfall down there in central Texas here the next couple of days.
Yeah, very sad situation. Our heart goes out to all those folks that are dealing with that. Let's put up your slides and let you give us an update.
Okay, and yeah, you hit the nail on the head, sir, with a pretty quiet, uneventful par for the course. I don't have any big headlines here across the Corn Belt locales. Other than, and I was talking about this on the radio, yeah, it was knee high in the 4th of July. If you put the kid or the grandkid on your shoulders and it's up to their knee height because things are looking mighty fine, even in some of the drier parts of the Corn Belt, even still in some of the droughty areas. Now, there are some folks that have dealt with severe weather, hail and high wind, but in very isolated pockets. And we saw some dryness issues even in parts of the central Corn Belt, but some great stands both in the corn and soybean. We're already moving into the reproductive stages of corn and beans. For example, 1/5, 18% of the U.S. corn crop is silking. 32% of the beans are blooming. Those numbers are ahead of 5-year averages, and even some great stands in some of the drier topsoils of southern Wisconsin, northern Illinois. We did have some scattered pockets of rain since late last week, and they've ranged from just settling the dust to 2 or 3 inches in the parts of central and east central Illinois in small pockets. So, and that's a typical distribution of rainfall. If you were to take an average rainfall for parts of the Corn Belt, actually much of the Corn Belt, at this point in summertime, it's as little as a 1/4 inch on the lower side, maybe 1/2 to 3/4 on the higher side in some areas. So we've been pretty much hitting the target there. And topsoil is the only real issue through Illinois, still running at about short and very short by about 43%. That's the only Midwestern state that is on a shorter side of the stick regarding topsoil moisture levels. But still, things are looking great out there in the back 40. Plain states, scattered showers and thunderstorms. Had some big storms in the Nebraska Panhandle, western Kansas, eastern Colorado during Monday evening. And some of those moved into the Corn Palace, Sioux Empire region and up north, west and south of the Twins. And overall, typical seasonal heat across the plains, 90 to 100 degree heat. Some of that high plains areas, the southern plains of Texas and Oklahoma up near 100. And they are going to be moving into kind of the hot ridge as the rains wind down. There's going to be heat, even more heat and humidity involved in that cleanup and recovery effort across central Texas going forward here later on this week. Montana still kind of leads the pack with some of the worst topsoil moisture ratings, pasture land ratings, and spring wheat ratings, and kind of the epicenter of some of the ongoing dryness and drought there. We'll have the drought monitor from last week coming up here in just a bit. Still some unsettled weather, cleanup and recovery. 20 inches of rain since July 3rd and around that Kerr County and surrounding counties through central Texas. You'll see that we go from normal soils or even wetter soils in a small area, then quickly into that hill country as you venture south out of the Guadalupe River Basin into the upper Rio Grande Basin. you run into some of those rock hard soils that are still drought ridden. And that was another key ingredient to getting this devastating flood situation going into central Texas. And of course, the Gulf Coast area is quiet, but the coastal sections, the Outer Banks, our favorite places, some once in a while in the summertime season, had 5 to 10 inches of rain out there towards Max's place in eastern North Carolina as well. Some significant rainfall. So that was a corridor of the Mid-Atlantic region that needed some measure of rain, and they get it from depression and storm Chantel. 100-degree heat in the wake of that, which is not unusual. You get on the backside, that upper level high that we talk about so frequently, that's moved in for a couple of days. So 95 to 100-degree heat, along with that humidity in the Carolinas, and their crop situation continues to move along very nicely as well. Hot, dry through the western states. The irrigated cotton, that's really all they do out in California from a cotton standpoint, running well ahead of the 5-year average. Open bowls out there, and still the elevated fire risk because of these dry-based thunderstorms. You lose low-level moisture, but you can still grow the cumulonimbus clouds. You get a stroke of lightning and then plenty of fuel to get things going. Gusty winds, hot temperatures, and certainly fuel for the fires. And so some of those are beginning to break out across parts of the northern Great Basin and Pacific Northwest. There is the Tuesday afternoon weather maps and charts. You just got these meandering frontal boundaries that really have no significant definition, maybe slightly drier, slightly cooler air on one side, a little more heat and humidity, and on the other side, put daytime heating on it, rain-cooled air that comes out of some of these nighttime thunderstorms as they decay and wind down in the morning, and you just make more of these scattered across the Great Plains, eastern and southern areas, the Midwest, most of the organized rains into the coastal sections of the Northeast of New England. That's kind of the leftover tropical fetch of moisture from Chantel, scattered across the Gulf Coast and down through Florida. The rains will pick up ahead of a weak cool front, again picking up some of that Chantel moisture, at least the higher humidity dew points, and more rain over the Mid-Atlantic region and into sections of the Northeast of New England. When we take a look at the drought monitor, you'll see how vastly improved, even in the eastern states and even down through Florida, where we're making some headway in the rainy season down there with dryness and drought. Maybe some severe weather in and around the Black Hills. That'll be probably large hail this afternoon and evening time. A couple of showers in the areas of the Sioux Empire region, Corn Palace region, as we move on through tomorrow morning into the upper Midwest. Organized rains for the Mid-Atlantic region, Gulf Coast. So everybody that needs rain gets rain as it applies to the eastern and southeastern states. That's the story again for the day tomorrow. That warm front moving back into the plains has 90-degree heat with it. Again, a couple of gusty thunderstorms across the northern plains, northern and central Rockies. The monsoon setup has temporarily wound down. That was also a contributing factor to some of those rains and through Texas as well. So you had kind of the perfect flash flood storm getting going into central Texas. And again, they're not completely done with dealing with some degree of rainfall down there in the coming days. And again, a pretty benign, quiet weather pattern, typical seasonal. That's really the best way to call it. Uneven distribution on rain, coverages, and amounts on any given day. But if you were to take a cumulative effect, 3 to 5 or 5 to 7 days, generally speaking, you'll fall in that the quarter to 3/4 of an inch category with some outlier or higher numbers where a couple storms get a little stronger in the days to come. And there's the Thursday outlook with a wetter pattern for the eastern third of the country. And for the next 48 hours, rain's focused on some of the drier areas of Illinois. Don't need any more rain down through Missouri or Arkansas or the southeastern plains. But the rains are welcome up through Florida, the Cotton Belt, more rain back into the Carolinas, into the Northeast and New England, and just hit miss at best across the western states as the atmosphere gets kind of capped off because of heat in the that particular part of the country. Going forward, the active weather pattern in a couple of areas, primarily heat in the southwest, moving through the next 5 to 7 days. The Gulf Coast areas, including humidity issues down into Georgia, the Carolinas, parts of northern Florida. Significant rain the next couple of days, as mentioned, Mid-Atlantic region. There will be some significant rain into the central winter wheat belt. Hopefully, harvest has moved north out of Kansas and Oklahoma. I think it has. But some of the drier reaches of the upper Midwest, western and northwestern Corn Belt, Wisconsin and Illinois get more timely on the dot rain. So again, getting even more bearish on the drought talk. And I think when it does materialize, and it will, August into September, it may be a benefit from an early harvest standpoint. The way things are looking and maturing out there across the Corn Belt areas, that could very well be the story. Watch for some of the severe weather hail-bearing storms in the next few days across the Dakotas. There is a very quiet, uneventful satellite picture across the Atlantic basin. You can see the African coast to the right and bottom right on your frame there, and a little cloud fragment in through the Caribbean, north and east of Puerto Rico, maybe around the Jamaica area. And that's it. There's just nothing going on. We know it's early in the season, but typically there ought to be more brighter clouds from Africa teleconnecting into maybe Central America, what we call the intertropical convergence zone. It's not like really expected to get going here for the foreseeable future. I think it'll be a ramped up season, but a compact season. And until and when that gets going, the rains continue on across the heartland. And looks like we may have a pretty favorable setup here of even an early harvest. And I wouldn't be surprised that, and I've talked about this on radio, that I'm talking that the crop is probably going to be made at least over that central Corn Belt area here going forward with timely rains and no big issues until we get into the drier spell of weather, which will be a benefit from an early harvest standpoint later in August and September. Anyway, scattered showers and thunderstorms continue on in some of the cleanup and recovery efforts across central Texas. Rains will be more significant in the southeast, mid-Atlantic region, another 2 to 4 on top of what they picked up from Chantel. So maybe some quality issues with cotton and soybeans out there and what's left of tobacco in the Carolina area. Showers and thunderstorms across the northern and central plains into the upper Midwest, western and northern Corn Belt. There are wide variants of rain amounts. Some of them are garden variety soaking. Others you get too much issues with hail and high wind. And what was really expected to be a good scenario of rainfall ends up being too severe laden in some of these storms across the plains and western Corn Belt locales. And the hot weather for now, the real tough stuff continues across the west and southwestern states, the 105, 110, 112 degree readings out there. Under that H across Southern California and the southwestern states, that's the core of the heat. You can see the jet stream pattern, a little buckle making its way Friday to Saturday and into the Canadian Prairie, the Great Lakes region on Sunday. Another one on its heels between Monday and Tuesday. That's kind of running the periphery of some of this heat and humidity. So there's no missed opportunities to get organized, some semblance of organized range relative to almost mid-July going out of the northern and central plains back into the Corn Belt locales. Heat and humidity from Texas, but the rains will be winding down, and more heat and humidity across the deep south and southeastern states. This is a pretty much typical par for the course up air pattern for the country, and again is not a droughty, dry ridden upper air setup. So rains will continue in typical mid-July to late July fashion. There's a system moving through the plains, as mentioned, between Friday, Saturday, along on Sunday, with still warm temperatures, slightly drier air. The humidity works back in on increasing south winds, and another boundary makes its way Monday to Tuesday across the plains. And once again, we make rain out of the plains and across the Corn Belt locale. So northern and central plains, pasture looking relatively okay, except for Montana, parts of the western Dakotas. Obviously, too much of a good thing of late in through Oklahoma and southward through Texas, middle part of the country. All ahead forward on crop development and a rapid pace, and what's probably going to be an early harvest this year for a good part of the Corn Belt. And at least, well, for now, welcome rains across some of the drier areas of the plains, the western Corn Belt, the next 5 to 7 days, upper Midwest, western Great Lakes region. When we take a look at the drought monitor, you see that's exactly what we need in that particular part of the country. A little fetch of moisture, probably from a tropical system coming up out of the Pacific states and through western Mexico. And the wet weather continues on. This is more, this is the next 7 days, most of that rain in the mid-Atlantic region down through Georgia and Florida over the next probably 2 or 3 in that particular part of the country. There is the drought monitor, by the way. If we were to lay that precip chart over the next 5 to 7 days, yeah, we make some additional inroads. May not end it, but generally speaking, pastures kind of do it okay through Nebraska, more so Kansas and points on southward. We'll get additional dryness and drought-ridden improvement. Topsoils, North Illinois, southern Wisconsin, into Michigan. We've seen rain already through areas west and north of the Twins. Matter of fact, they had some flooding southwest of the Twin Cities this past couple of days, and so there'll be improvement there. You can see, Sarah, as you get into central and south Texas, Kirk County would be right in that northern flank of, if you look at central and south Texas, maybe in that abnormally dry to moderate drought. You can see how very quickly you change soil moisture from central Texas from the Kerr County area back towards the Rio Grande and begin to tap into that Rio Grande River Valley. So you're going from wet now to overtly dry still. And that was, again, through the hills and valleys of the hill country of Texas. Another example that under the right circumstances, you put rain on top of these dry, drought-ridden soils, you come up with additional flooding issues in that particular part of the country. So that's the story, at least as it applies to the drought monitor. And going forward here the next 6 to 10 days, hot weather, that is, over the southwest. The jet stream continues to bring welcome rains to the northern part of the country, the northern and eastern Corn Belt locales, the Canadian Prairie, mid-Atlantic region. No real heat as we move through the reproductive stages of corn and soybeans. No big headlines, as it ought to be for July. Around the Midwest, even a little cooler than average, with more moisture back in the forecast for the plains. The heat is along and west of the divide and over the far eastern Corn Belt into the northeast of New England. And it's just kind of a benign, broad brush look at it, but there are, as we mentioned, ample opportunities for significant moisture. It's a little above average on this depiction from the National Weather Service, but it certainly beats dryness and drought and all that. The weather pattern continues through West Texas and the eastern states, tropically induced moisture there. So no big headlines other than what's been going down through Texas. We continue on steady as she goes on crop growth and development, pasture lands, cattle operations in areas away from Texas, and probably away from the drought areas of Montana and the Dakotas. And like we talked about in the last live stream, more bearish on dry drought-ridden talk. And when it does materialize, it will likely be of benefit from crop maturation and an early harvest standpoint. So far, so good. And until we get the tropical storms and hurricanes to get going in the Atlantic here, which will be a ramped up hyper season, probably not the numbers that the National Weather Service was kicking out, but a busy season as we get into August and more so September and early October. Until that gets going, we continue to make rain across the plains and Corn Belt locales. I'm sure people will find stuff to talk about and complain about in the coffee shop, but it's not. I didn't do it this time, so I'm delivering.
Yeah, good job pushing that drought back till more harvest time and not in the middle here. Our corn around northern Illinois was curling pretty good here the last week, and then got those rains that came through, and now it's like you say, it's shot up and overhead high and looking great. So that's always
my radio pals in Danville and Champaign saying that the corn is looking glossy and waxy, which is another.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, they've had very little leaf curl, and again, anywhere between about 0.8 and close to about 3 inches of rain if you were to broad brush it across eastern Illinois, from Champaign to Lake Shelbyville and eastward from there into parts of western Indiana around our Danville radio station. So at least that particular part of the Corn Belt, and we had more of those scattered across the western Corn Belt and upper Midwest, those kind of rainfall numbers the past several days. So the beat goes on. That's the way rains work in July, and it's the only way we can get anything going organized rainfall-wise, unless you're going to bring a tropical system in, which we're not going to do. So, again, steady as she goes. Sit back and watch it grow, I guess, and maybe get the harvest equipment ready to go earlier than usual.
We'll be touching base with you again, Greg, on Friday, and you can give us an update at that time. Hopefully we're not talking more rain down in Texas. Hopefully that has subsided by then, and we're giving them a little break down there and getting some seasonal weather across the country.
It'll be heat and humidity they got to contend with, but the rains are winding down, but that's going to be awfully tough and all that heat and humidity down through Texas, and we'll see what we can do down there. Certainly, as you pointed out, thoughts and prayers with those folks down there in the Lone Star State.
Exactly. Well, Greg, thank you so much for joining us here today, and thank you all for being with us as well.